Federalist number 39, part 5. This is paragraph 13. Just remember that on the first part of this Federalist, I had written teachingamericanhistory.org as a good resource to go to. And I said that Gordon Lloyd, who is the scholar who's in charge of that website, in his summary of this Federalist says, we're trying to see whether this Constitution that came out of Philadelphia Convention, whether it satisfies two tests, two criteria. One, whether it gives us a Republican form of government. The second is whether it gives us a federal form of government. And then after that, I said use National Archives and Library of Congress.gov for places to find primary material. So very important. So far, Madison has been talking about that this is a Republican form of government. It's a federal one, not a national one, like our critics constantly say. Because a national government, at this time when they talk about a national government, they're talking about a consolidated government. They use these two words, which means all the power is concentrated in the hands of the federal government. He says, no, we're having a federal form of government, which is power is divided between the state governments and the national government. So let me continue with paragraph 13. The difference between a federal and a national government as it relates to the operation of the government is by the adversaries of the plan of the convention supposed to consist in this, that in the former the powers operate on the political bodies composing the Confederacy in their political capacities, in the latter on the individual citizens composing the nation in their individual capacities. On trying the Constitution by this criterion, it falls under the national, not the federal character, though perhaps not so completely as has been understood. In several cases, and particularly in the trial of controversies in which states may be parties, they must be viewed and proceeded against in their collective and political capacities only. But the operation of the government on the people in their individual capacities, in its ordinary and most essential proceedings, will, in the sense of its opponents on the whole, designated in this relation a national government. So he says, this is a federal government. The only reason they're misunderstanding and calling it a national government is because we have said, according to this new Constitution, the federal government can hold people in different states accountable directly. If they break the law, the federal government doesn't need the permission of the state governments to go after those people. So federal law will directly apply to them, and that's why our critics are saying this is a national government. Why don't you all come and go through the state? Why don't you come and ask the state to go arrest this person or put him in prison? And he says that we've already tried that in the past few papers. He's already said we've already tried that. That's why that old Constitution of ours that we live under is not good. That's why we wanted to change it, because we need to have this system where laws should be respected. The federal laws should be respected, and if people know that federal government has to go through the state to get people to actually do what the law says, then the people won't. It says we've had plenty of experience and we're not going to do that foolish thing again. The next paragraph, but if the government be national with regard to the operation of its powers, it changes its aspect again when we contemplate it in relation to the extent of its powers. The idea of a national government involves in it not only an authority over the individual citizens, but an indefinite supremacy over all persons and things, so far as they are objects of lawful government. Among a people consolidated into one nation, this supremacy is completely vested in the national legislature. Among communities united for particular purposes, it is vested partly in the general and partly in the municipal legislatures. In the former case, all local authorities are subordinate to the supreme and may be controlled, directed, or abolished by it at pleasure. In the latter, the local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy, no more subject, within their respective spheres, to the general authority than the general authority is subject to them within its own sphere. In this relationship, then, the proposed government cannot be deemed a national one, since its jurisdiction extends to certain enumerated objects only. So see again, he says, since its jurisdiction extends to certain enumerated objects only. He's telling his critics that the powers of national government, the national government, are enumerated, they're numbered, they're limited. We know what they are. And leaves several states a residuary and inviolable sovereignty over all other objects. So see, the rest of the powers will go back to the states, and federal government cannot mess with it. So again, this is a federal system. It is true that in controversies relating to the boundary between the two jurisdictions, the tribunal, which is ultimately to decide, is to be established under the general government. But this does not change the principle of the case. The decision is to be impartially made, according to the rules of the Constitution, and all the usual and most effectual precautions are taken to secure this impartiality. Some such tribunal is clearly essential to prevent an appeal to the sword and a dissolution of the compact, and that it ought to be established under the general rather than under the local governments, or to speak more properly, that it would be safely established under the first alone, is a position not likely to be combated. He says there are cases that come up that need to be decided whether the federal government is right or the state government is right, and those cases will go to trial, will be found out. But we know for this government to work, for the union to be a good, prosperous union, energetic, we have to have one source of authority deciding cases between the two of us. And there should not be any ifs or buts about it. If we want to live next to one another peacefully in a union, rather than, like he says, draw the sword, going to war against one another, and keeping our states weak, keeping us in subservient to the European monarchs, because that is what's going to happen if we don't unite. They'll take advantages of our weaknesses, divide us and conquer us, take our resources, and also will not accept us as equals, and they will not give us a fair treatment when we want to deal with them at their ports in their countries. They won't let us deal with their outside territories, with their outside colonies. So we have to constantly be smart and not fall for the wrong papers and writings of the people who are criticizing this Constitution. Because for the most part, they are people who want to keep their positions, their money-making positions in their states, and they feel like if a union is formed, they will lose that opportunity. They will lose that easy job. They will lose all that money that was coming to them easily.